The cost of living in Sarasota versus the rest of Florida. Everyone tells you that Florida has no state income tax, but what they don't tell you is how Sarasota quietly claws back that money through specialized real estate line items. Last month, a client of mine almost pulled the trigger on a gorgeous property here, thinking they were saving for a fortune compared to Naples, until we uncovered 3 hidden local expenses that completely shifted their 10-year financial projection. If you're tracking the cost of living in Sarasota, looking at generic online calculators, that will actively cost you money for sure. There's just no doubt. Over my years helping luxury buyers and families relocate to Southwest Florida, I've mapped out the exact financial differences between Sarasota and the rest of the state. In this video, we are going to break down the real numbers so you can protect your capital and make an intelligent move, okay? When you start analyzing the cost of living in Sarasota, you realize very quickly that Florida is not a monolith. Buying a home or retiring in Sarasota is a completely different financial equation than doing the same in Orlando, Tampa, or even Miami. This video is specifically for relocation buyers, luxury investors, and families who need to understand exactly where their capital is going before making a major move to Southwest Florida. We aren't going to talk about the price of milk or generic gas averages, just not happening. Instead, we are diving deep into the actual numbers, the true state of the property tax, the insurance realities, community fees like CDD fees, you gotta watch those, in places like Lakewood Ranch, and the lifestyle premiums that define our market. Understanding the true cost of living in Sarasota means knowing how to spot the hidden variables that can swing your carrying costs by thousands of dollars, okay? And this is every single month. By the end of the video, you will know exactly what Sarasota stacks up against the rest of Florida and why certain neighborhoods are carrying a hidden premium and the single biggest financial trap that catches out-of-state buyers completely off guard. The spreadsheet, lie versus reality. If you search for the cost of living in Sarasota on standard relocation websites, you'll see data stating that Sarasota is roughly 8 to 10% more expensive than the national average. But that number is fundamentally misleading because it averages out things that don't apply to the neighborhoods you are actually looking at. That doesn't make sense, right? What nobody talks about is that Sarasota's cost structure isn't driven by everyday consumer goods. It is driven entirely by real estate demand, land scarcity, and localized infrastructure fees that we previously noted. CDD fees. If you compare Sarasota to a city like Orlando, on paper, Orlando looks cheaper. But here's the part that completely changes the equation. Orlando doesn't give you the coastal appreciation or lifestyle insulation that Sarasota offers. When the market shifts, coastal Southwest Florida real estate historically holds its ground far better than inland markets. So while your upfront purchase price and your baseline costs of living in Sarasota might be higher, your net worth protection is vastly superior. All right? Migration patterns are down south and to the coast. You have to look at your living costs, not just as money going out, but as a preservation of your capital. But that only works if you don't get blindsided by the localized line items, which brings us directly to the property tax trap that most northern buyers fall into. The Sarasota property tax phenomenon. Let's talk about it. So, property taxes, because this is where most relocation buyers get caught off guard. You might look at a listing online right now in Pomerantz or Siesta Key and see that the current owner is paying $5,000 a year in taxes. All right? Sounds pretty good, right? You do your math based on the $5,000 number, assuming that's what your carrying costs will be. That is a massively expensive mistake, okay? Massive, incredibly mistake. expensive mistake. In the state of Florida, we have the Save Our Homes Act, okay? It's great, which caps the assessed value increase of primary residence at 3% per year for existing owners. If the person selling the home has lived there for 15 years, their assessed tax value is completely decoupled from reality. The moment you buy that property, the assessment resets to the current purchase price. Your new tax bill could easily double or triple from what the previous owner was paying, okay? When you compare Sarasota's tax millage rate to Southeast Florida, like Broward, Miami-Dade County, Sarasota is actually highly competitive. Our millage rates are generally lower, meaning you get more home for your tax dollar here than you would on the East Coast, okay? But you must calculate your taxes based on prospective purchase price, not historical list. If you don't, your first year of living in Sarasota will come with a very unpleasant financial awakening. The two realms of community fees, CDD fees, not everyone's favorite for sure, versus HOAs. Okay, now let's look at something unique to master plan communities in our region, particularly when you look at Lakewood Ranch versus older established parts of Florida. This is the distinction between an HOA fee and a CDD fee. Many buyers come to me wanting to look at master plan communities because they want top tier amenities. Of course, resort style living. Who doesn't want that? Pristine landscaping, incredible security. Yeah, it's got it. But here is what nobody tells you about buying into these newer developments. You aren't just paying an HOA fee. You are often paying a capital development district fee, or a CDD. A CDD is essentially a bond issued to develop the infrastructure of the community, the roads, the sewers, the underground utilities, okay? That bond is paid back through your non-ad valorem property taxes every single year. And it can add anywhere from $2,000 to upwards of $7,000 annually to your bill, completely separate from the HOA fees. If you look at the cost of living in Sarasota compared to older parts of, say, Tampa or established neighborhoods in St. Pete, those older areas rarely have CDD fees because the infrastructure was paid off decades ago, right? Typically lasts around 30 years. However, there is a flip side to this coin. A mature neighborhood without CDDs, you might face a massive unexpected assessment or assessments when the private roads need paving or the drainage system fails. In a master plan community like Lakewood Ranch, Palmer Ranch, that maintenance is structurally accounted for. It's a predictable cost versus an unpredictable risk. So there's your flip side of the coin. So the insurability matrix in Southwest Florida. So you need to know about this. Hot topic. We cannot discuss the cost of living in Sarasota without directly addressing the elephant in the room. Homeowners and flood insurance. This is the single biggest topic of conversation for anyone moving to Florida right now. And the numbers vary widely depending on exactly where you put your feet. If you buy a home built in the 1980s, let's say, on Siesta Key, right on the water, your insurance profile is going to be exponentially high. And you may be forced onto Citizens, all right, which is the state-backed insurance. That state-backed insurer is basically your last resort too, by the way. But here is the strategic insight that most national media outlets completely miss. If you move just a few miles inland past Interstate I-75 to communities like Lakewood Ranch, or if you buy newer construction built after the major building codes updates, your insurance costs drop dramatically. Newer homes built with hurricane-rated impact glass, modern roof-to-wall attachments, and sitting in preferred flood zone X, which means you're not in a flood zone, where flood insurance isn't even federally mandated, are seeing highly stable, reasonable insurance premiums. When you compare Sarasota's insurance landscape to, say, Miami or the Florida Keys even, our premiums are often significantly more manageable because our geographic positioning offers a level of natural protection that low-lying southeastern coast simply just doesn't have. It is entirely possible to live in Sarasota and have insurance costs that mirror what we're paying in, or what you were paying in the Midwest, the Northeast. But you have to be incredibly intentional about your age, about the age, the location, and the elevation of the property that you buy. All key factors. All right. So navigating these financial variables is exactly why having a trusted advisor on the ground matters. If you're planning on moving to Sarasota, Lakewood Ranch, or any of our surrounding keys, you want to ensure you aren't walking into a hidden tax or an insurance trap. So let's connect. My team and I specialize in helping relocation buyers, luxury investors, and families transition smoothly into Southwest Florida. We don't just show you houses, all right? We break down the exact carrying costs, the neighborhood nuances, and the true financial metrics of every property you consider. Go ahead and look at the description below on this video. You'll find my direct contact link there where you can schedule a private consultation with us. And if you're finding this breakdown valuable, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Let me know where you are moving from and what your biggest concern is regarding the Florida market. I read every single comment, and it helps me tailor this content directly to what you need to know. All right, so let's get into the lifestyle premium, and what are you actually buying? Let's pivot to everyday reality of the lifestyle premium, because the cost of living in Sarasota isn't just about the bills. It's about what those bills buy you, right? That's pretty sweet. People often compare Sarasota to Naples. They call it the new Naples. They look at real estate prices and assume they're interchangeable. But from a lifestyle ROI, return on investment perspective, they are entirely different ecosystems. Naples skews older, quieter, and highly traditional, which is nice. Sarasota offers a distinct cultural density that you typically cannot find in mid-sized coastal Florida cities. Even Michael Jordan's building a private club here. We have our own professional ballet, the opera, we have the Ringling Museum, and culinary scene that punches far above its weight class. When you live here, you aren't just paying for proximity to Siesta or Lido Beach. You're paying for an active, intellectually stimulating lifestyle. If you look at the cost of dining, arts, private clubs, memberships in Sarasota compared to Palm Beach or Miami, Sarasota represents an incredible value play. You can access world-class golfing, private yacht clubs, elite dining at a fraction of the initiation fees, and annual dues required on the East Coast. So your comparison is really impressive. So while your baseline expenses might be higher than an inland city like Ocala or Gainesville, your lifestyle dollars go infinitely further in Sarasota than it does in Florida's other luxury enclaves. So the investor squeeze, producing income in Sarasota. So for those of you looking at this market for an investment or a wealth preservation standpoint, the cost of living in Sarasota influences tenants' dynamics and rental yields in a very specific way. Because Sarasota has a higher barrier to entry regarding home prices and living costs, it attracts a highly stable, affluent demographic of long-term renters and seasonal visitors. If you invest in a rental property here, and your maintenance costs and property management fees might be slightly higher than the state average due to the premiums on local labor. But your vacancy risk is significantly lower. What nobody tells you about the Florida investment market is that cheap entry point cities often come with high tenant turnover, higher eviction rates, and severe property depreciation during economic downturns. Nobody loves that. In Sarasota, the constrained supply of land sandwiched between the Gulf of America and the protected agricultural lines to the east creates a natural floor for property values. Affluent retirees, remote executives are consistently migrating here, creating a permanent demand shock for high-end housing. Okay? As an investor, paying the premium to own a real estate in Sarasota isn't an expense. It is a defensive strategy against inflation and market volatility. Again, migration pattern down south to the coast. And we got the #1 beach in the US. Strong closing for you guys. Let's talk about this. Ultimately analyzing the cost of living in Sarasota comes down to understanding the difference between price and value. Price is what you pay up front. Value is what you get out of the asset, right? And the lifestyle over the next 10 to 20 years. Yes, your property taxes will reset when you buy. Yes, you need to navigate CDD fees and master plan communities. And yes, you must be highly strategic about your insurance mapping. But when you weigh those costs against the lack of state income tax, the historically resilient property appreciation, the lower millage rate compared to Miami, and the unmatched cultural lifestyle of Southwest Florida, the math becomes incredibly clear. Sarasota isn't just a place to spend your money. It's a place to deploy your capital for a better quality of life. But there's one specific thing about the Sarasota real estate market that most out-of-state buyers don't realize until after they close on a home, and it has to do with how the county boundaries affect your everyday wallet. To make sure you never miss the real-time numbers, neighborhood deep dives, and local market shifts as they actually happen, hit that subscribe button right now to get the latest updates in Sarasota. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.